Ms. Chairman. Ms. Chairman.
Tracy Martin.
Very much. Mr. Chair, I'm going to concentrate my contribution on Clause 6 in the Local Government Auckland Transition Provisions Amendment Bill. But before I do, I just want to reiterate that New Zealand First is going to support this bill, not because we like it, but because we find ourselves in a position where, once again, an error has been made by this government, and we are required to, for the benefit of the over 1 million people sitting in Auckland, so that their future can be defined. I want to point out that I am one of only 2 members of this House who was one of the foundation elected members of the Auckland Council at a local board level. No, Ms. Moroney, it certainly wasn't my fault. I want to point out that the reason why this is important is that in the original legislation that set up Auckland City, a trade-off was made around the right of appeal, which is Clause 6. So a trade-off was made around the right of appeal, which restricted the ability for people to appeal once the unitary plan was in place, but that was traded off by having a draft unitary plan at the beginning of the process. Now, I was part of the process that in 17 months put together the Auckland plan, which informed the draft unitary plan. And the reason why this is a concern is that draft unitary plan was supposedly one of the most open and transparent processes that every ratepayer in the greater Auckland area could actually submit on. 2 things, and this is why this ability to appeal that is now being amended again from the original piece of legislation is so important. 2 things. When the draft unitary plan went out for consultation, it was only available online, with huge maps that actually took a lot of broadband download speed, and so that rural Rodney, for example, couldn't access it. So the majority of the citizens in rural Rodney, the majority of the ratepayers in rural Rodney, could not access the unitary plan maps for the draft unitary plan through the process that was put into place. That led to an urgent printing of 1 per library, and then those people could then go to the library and look at the unitary plan maps, the overlays, the heritage overlays, which also this bill talks to, which is why it's so important that we address those issues. So the other thing that happened too, and which concerns me about this, again, this manipulation around the right of appeal, is that when we finished the draft unitary plan consultation and it went on and went back to the councillors and went back to become the unitary plan, which is what we're talking about here, that people are resubmitting on, certain things happened out of the blue when the unitary plan now being consulted on came back. For example, let's talk about the rural-urban boundaries. Now, there's 79% of the submissions have been heard by these hearings.
Mr. Nash, can you sit down, please? I can't see the speaker.
Thank you. 79% of the submissions around the unitary plan that have been submitted have been heard. There's approximately 5,000 submissions left on these specific sections, and this goes to the changing of the recommendations ability, that it can be done section by section. One of the sections that is to be done next is all the submissions on the rural-urban boundary. And the rural-urban boundary, for example, one example only out of the Rodney area, in the draft unitary plan, let's take the northern end of Warkworth, it was agreed by, under those submissions, that the rural-urban boundary would go as far as Matakana Road. It would not jump the road, and it was agreed by the community, the Rodney local board, and it was put forward to the councillors. By the time it became the unitary plan that is being submitted on, that this bill is dealing with, that urban boundary had jumped the road and gone through 4 private properties, and that change came after major consultation and at council level. Hence my concern, sir, that what we're talking about is now pushing through quickly to meet a deadline set in original legislation, actually set in the Local Government Auckland Transition Provisions Amendment Act 2013. We're talking about pushing through quickly with split hearings, with only 2 hearings people on each one around rural-urban boundaries. The other thing that we're talking about, the other special area that is going to be consulted on in this last section is special character. the special character overlays. And an example of why that is important, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair.
Look, Karako.